Okay, so I'm going to be personal with you for a second before we start. So we meet the third Tuesday of every month. And so last month, this is hard for me. Last month we met on July 21st, about 2 hours before I walked on the stage. I got a text from my friend Peggy, who's here. She's also my neighbor. This is not in the rehearsal. Let me know that my friend Penny, who lives 2 doors down, had taken her own life. So this has affected a lot of people, and so we don't want something like this to happen and for God's glory to not have a chance to grab hold of this. And so I know a lot of you are tired of the political campaigns already. I know I am already. But we started a spiritual campaign called A Penny for Your Thought. And so what we're asking in a way to honor and in a memory of Penny, but to honor her mother, her father, her brother, her sister-in-law, her cousins, her former co-workers, the people that found her, who are 2 neighbors, and her parents who found her body, in a way of just honoring her memory and those who still suffer. Every Tuesday for the rest of your life, or as long as you can remember, we're going to ask if you're in agreement with me to just text somebody, call somebody, just check on somebody you know that's suffering, somebody you know that's grieving. And if you know somebody who looks like they have it all together, can I tell you they don't? Check on them too. Let them know you see how hard they're working to make it look like they have it all together. And always say to them, a penny for your thought. The family would really, really appreciate it. Can we agree to do that on Tuesdays? All right, thank you very much. So today, August 18th, is a very special day for me. August 18th, 1986, 29 years ago. 29 years ago, this day, I came to an intensive care unit at Grand Strand Hospital in Myrtle Beach. My father was on one side of my bed. There was a priest and 2 nuns on the other side of my bed. I had no idea what was going on and what had happened. And I learned that I got into the beach. Obviously, I got drunk, and I sat on a 2-story building, but I kept going and landed on the cement. I was very unclear for a long time on what happened, and honestly, it was until last year I always wondered, like, who found me? How did I get to the hospital? And a year ago, I got this message from my friend Matt, and I want to read part of it to you. Kim, I will never forget when I walked out of the hotel room at Spring Maid and found you had fallen from the 2nd-story balcony and hit your head on the walkway. Beside you, a broken wine cooler bottle. We comforted you the best we could until the ambulance came. That visual of a 15-year-old girl with a broken wine cooler bottle with her head bleeding makes me so sad. She did not know God. All she knew was self-destruction. And when I came to an ICU, I had no idea what was going on, and I did not know that the doctors had come to my father and told him that I most likely would not live, and that if I did, I'd be paralyzed because I had a blood clot in my brain. All I knew was that I came to, and there was a priest and 2 nuns and my father by my bed. And they had been called in to read me my last rites and to pray for me to live. What I deserved on that day, 29 years ago today, what I deserved was to die. Based on my behavior, I deserved to die. Thank God life isn't fair. God's grace was abound. I didn't know him, but he knew me. And I don't know why I lived, and so many people who have the same thing happen don't. But I know his grace and mercy was all over me that day. Grace trumps fairness. I'm here today because of God's grace. So let's talk about what is God's grace. What does that mean? Grace means it's a blessing that we don't deserve. It's undeserved favor. It's God's perfect devotion, dedication to your imperfection. That picture of a 15-year-old who at that point had been a daily drinker for 4 years, who only cared about getting high. Picture of her with a fractured skull by a broken wine cooler bottle. That's an imperfect picture, but God's grace was perfect. And that's all that was needed. So I started thinking how, assuming grace has been around since God's been around. So I looked in the Bible and I found this scripture. We all know who Noah is. We all know about the ark and that God found favor and put favor on Noah, that he didn't know what an ark was. He'd never seen rain before, but God knew Noah would have enough faith to build this ark. So the Bible tells us in Genesis 6 but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. 3 chapters later, Noah got drunk, was laying around naked in front of his family. He drank some wine, got drunk, and lay naked inside his tent. Do you know this is the same guy that God put favor on? God was not surprised he was found drunk and naked 3 chapters later. He already knew Noah was imperfect. He already knew that was going to happen, and he still put favor on Noah. Because of his grace, we don't have to be perfect. That's good news. So if shame is that amazing, what stops us from embracing it? And that's shame. Shame came into this world very early on. When Eve, who if only she had been anorexic, I'm still mad about that. But she wasn't, so she ate from the tree, and shame is the first negative emotion felt on this earth. Shame is the thing that will stop us from feeling grace. So what is shame? Shame makes everything, when I'm in shame, it makes everything feel personal, except for the one thing that was done for me, and that's the crucifixion. When I am in shame, if I walk into a grocery store and people are laughing, I think they're laughing at me. People are whispering, I think they're whispering and talking about me. Everything feels personal when you live in shame. Except for the one thing, the most personal thing that will ever be done for you, and that's the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. This is a quote by Brené Brown. Shame corrodes the very part of us that helps us believe that we are capable of change. I think all of us can agree that true change only comes from God. Change is very, very difficult. If you're here and you're trying to change your spouse, keep doing it. It's great. It's a great use of your energy. No. You cannot change someone else. Changing yourself is very hard. You cannot change without God. And so if I have shame, the very part of me that will let God in, that will let me change, becomes corroded. Shame is so powerful because it starts me believing that something's wrong with me. It helps me believe that. It starts me thinking that I get into self-pity, and I believe that I get so much blame that I'm convinced that I deserve to be undeserving. That whatever's happening to me, that I must deserve it because I'm not good enough. Unhealed shame has the power to turn any of us into a victim. It's that powerful. This is a quote by John Gardner about self-pity. Self-pity is easily the most destructive of the non-pharmaceutical narcotics. It is addictive, gives momentary pleasure, and separates the victim from reality. I've said for years that the number one drug in America is powerlessness, victimization. Victimization is the number one drug in America. In AA, we talk about self-pity, we talk about poor me. And we say, poor me, poor me, poor me, another. Right? So, I'm going to go back real quick. So we're going to talk tonight about the victimization and what happens. And so when I go into a victim mode, and I can easily do that, And if you're in an active addiction, you are in a victim mode. You are in shame and blame if you have some type of active addiction in your life right now. That when I go in and I become a victim, my prayer life becomes very interesting. My ability to hear his word, my ability to understand what is happening. So let me show you a little video, and this is what my prayer life looks like when I become a victim. So that's what so many of us do, is that we're so focused on what God's answer is supposed to be that we don't see his grace, we don't see his will, we don't see what he's actually doing all around us, that there are signs everywhere of what the next right thing to do is to get us out of victimization, and we only focus on what we want to have happen. You know, I even love that he took her picture down and put that away. We do that. We put church away. We put prayer away. We put the friends who are trying to speak truth into our lives, we walk away from them. That when we become a victim, we only hear and see what we want. And there's an incredible isolation that happens. It's very, very dangerous for us. So everybody gets victimized. Being victimized and being a victim are very different. Victimized means something's happening in your life beyond your control. You have very little power over what happened to you. Children get victimized a lot. There's a lot of victimization in the world, sadly. Molestation, divorce, adultery, bullying, being bullied at school, being bullied by your boss in the corporate world. There is so much true victimization in this world. Hey, my employee spoke up. What was that? There's so much true victimization in this world. It definitely happens. All of us have had something happen that we did not want. We had no say-so in it, and it hurt us, and it happened anyway. What happened to you is not what makes you a victim. It's not the event. It happens to so many of us that we become such into the victim role, we believe it's our identity, that we do not let God's healing, grace, and compassion in. So let's look at the cycle. God's grace is always available. It's always there. But we get into a cycle. So I want to identify that so we can try to reduce our likelihood of being in it. So again, everybody has a traumatic event. Everybody does. It can be being the last person picked for soccer. Or it can go all the way up to loss of child, or wanting to have a child, or your child never moving out. There's just so many. There's such a variety of ways. But everybody has an event that happens to them that's bigger than they are. When that happens, there's a message of shame that comes. There's some message that comes in that says that you deserve what just happened. You're not worthy. I'll always be alone. No one's ever going to like me. There is some message of shame that will come in. So once I have a traumatic event and now I think I'm not good enough, I start to put my identity around what happened to me. My attachment is no longer to my character, it's no longer to support in my life. My attachment and my identity, I now think, is what happened to me. When I was in active alcoholism, I would never be able to find my purpose. There was no chance. When you think your identity is an event, or you think your identity is a disorder, you will never find God's purpose for you, and you will stay victimized. Fear of anger. Victims have a really hard time with expressing their emotions, particularly anger. They're so scared of their anger that they will also not want you to be angry. So they can't be around someone being angry, and part of that is people-pleasing, A lot of people who've been victimized will always say yes. They're so scared of saying no to you. They're scared of you being angry or feeling their own anger. And so they will stay angry, don't get me wrong, but the anger will come out behaviorally, but they won't express it. So victims always are in fear of their emotions. When all this comes together, there's a victim mentality that becomes pervasive in your life. That is how you see things. It's now the lenses that you are looking through. It's how you hear and how you see. And when you do that, you suffer silently. In my opinion, the leading cause to divorce is silent suffering. It's years of being a victim and saying absolutely nothing and not having a voice. Victims won't have a voice. When all that comes together, you will live small. Your problems will always feel and be big, and you will live very small. And if you live small, then you're letting God be small in your life. So that is a cycle of a victim. So there's also certain characteristics that we get into that kind of keep us in this mode. So I want to identify those so we can get out of them. One is compare. Victims always compare. It's always that they will say that Judy got through that because she's married, or it's different for Kay because she's not from the South. There's always some comparison for somebody. And the Bible talks about comparison. In James 3:16, it says, comparison is what always leads to mental disorder and envy. Now, I have no idea in biblical times what they compared. I don't know if who had what tent, who had many cows, Birkenstocks. I have no idea what they compared. But it was enough that it made it in the Bible that we are not supposed to, at least a mental disorder. So pay attention to that. The victims will always say they can't get better because of somebody else has got it differently. Someone else can get better, but they can't. They don't have boundaries. And a lot of times they'll get angry with you if you have boundaries, but they very much struggle with having boundaries and knowing where they start and where they end. And it's always same old, same old. If you are living the life of a victim, you're stuck in a pattern. There's something that you're doing that keeps you in a pattern, that you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Let me give you an example. So let's say that Mike is on his way to my office to see me. And he texts me and he says, hey, can I have a glass of water when I get there? Can you have that prepared for me? I'm like, sure. So I give him a glass of water and I set it down where he sits, and he comes and we hang out. He never drinks the water, never looks at it, and he leaves. So the next week he comes back, same text, hey, Kim, can you get me a glass of water ready? Sure, Mike. Give him a glass of water, set it down. Doesn't look at it, nothing. So I have to pour it out. I have to throw it away. It takes my time and effort. It's my product. The third week, he texts me and says, hey, give me a glass of water. If on the third time I say nothing, do nothing, and I get him that glass of water, I'm a victim. So I want you to think about, who are you getting a glass of water for? Metaphorically, who are you doing? What are you doing over and over again? Wanting someone else to notice what you're doing. And they've shown you very clearly that whatever you're doing doesn't work. It's always stuck in a pattern. When we go into victim mode, our circumstances have a lot of power. It's what's happened to us is what dictates our day, not God. Again, we make God very small and our circumstances very big. The circumstances will strangle you. Victims always either over-focus on their part or they will undervalue their part. They'll always say that this is what blame is. Okay, blame is either everything's on me, if only I'd done it differently, if only I hadn't taken a left turn, if only I had done this for you. It's always on them. They have a lot of regret and a lot of blame. And blame means you're taking on everything, not taking responsibility. Or it's the opposite of that, and they undervalue. I promise you, there's people sitting in prison right now who will undervalue their part of how they got there. That is a victim mentality. Blame means either I put everything on me or I put nothing on me and everything on you. That is not responsibility. That is not how we get better. Victims act like everything is okay. If you ask them how they are, they'll say fine. In AA, we have a different meaning of what fine means, just to let you know. So they'll say fine or good. Listen, if that's not an honest answer for you, please have at least one or two people in your life you can give an honest answer. And you can say, I'm not okay, but I will be. Speak truth. Please don't suffer silently. There's also those people that you see them, everything's wrong. Everything's wrong. It doesn't matter. All right? It's the other extreme. So if it's this extreme or that extreme, whether it's everything's okay or nothing's okay, God's grace is in the middle. We suspend ourselves. He does not do that to us. That is self-will. His grace is in the middle for us. And they say, if only a lot. If only I hadn't left so early that day, we wouldn't have had a car accident. If only I hadn't called him back, he wouldn't have hurt himself. It's always if only. Living in the land of if only is really, really difficult. Really hard. And they also do yeah, but a lot. We call them frogs. Yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. It doesn't matter what you say. They'll say, I'll say, hey, I heard you were in remission completely from your cancer. It's fantastic. Yeah, but it could come back. Yeah, it could. So again, they stay in a victim mode. And part of that is because we start thinking our identity is what we're going through. Not our purpose. We just make it about our identity. So you are what you think. Whatever you think comes from your belief. Underneath whatever you're thinking is a belief. That belief is that you're not good enough, and that directs your thoughts. It will affect your behavior. And that's part of what keeps us stuck. And a lot of that behavior becomes inactivity and isolation. It's not a good place to be. And when we get victimized, we have a lot of childlike thoughts. We talked last month about what happens when we become that child. And children are powerless. They don't have control of what's going on. So if you're constantly thinking, well, I don't have a choice, I have to have that job. That's how a child thinks. You don't have to have that job. You really don't. You really can do something different. So when you start thinking you don't have choice, you're thinking like a child. You will always have choice. Adults have choices. When people feel powerless, they blame, and it gives them a feeling of pseudo-power and connection. People might be very angry at their dad, and so the only way they feel connected to him is to blame him for everything. And they think if they let go of that pain, they'll lose the connection they have to their dad. There are many reasons why people blame, but just pay attention that when you start feeling powerless and you start blaming somebody, that's part of the pattern and how you stay stuck. And there's always a benefit of being a victim. And don't tell me there's not one. There is. Whatever you're doing, you're getting something from it. There's a benefit from being a victim. And if it's just a matter of feeling connected to somebody, or it's some way of feeling like you get attention that way, there is some benefit of whatever you're doing right now. If you hurt me and I act like it's nothing, I will feel like I am nothing. When I feel like I am nothing, anything starts to feel like everything. If you hurt my feelings and I say nothing to you and act like it's not a big deal, it will become a big deal. It will affect my perception, right? So we can do some big ways and small. I'm going to give you a small, silly example. So I'm a runner. It's like our two first speakers were. So there's a middle school track near my house. And so I went there recently, and there were a bunch of teenage boys playing football in the middle of the track. There's a little football area. So instead of me thinking, wow, they're not on the streets. This is great, they're playing football. I got a little aggravated because one of them had put their shoes and water and stuff on the track right where I like to run. So here's me. So I like to run in the little fast lane, and so not fast, but I just like to be in the fast lane. And so every time I went to it, I would stare at them and jump over it, very exaggerated, and stare at them. I did that 12 times. 12 times. There are 3 other lanes. I didn't run in the lanes. I just go over staring at them. You think they cared? No. That is a victim mentality. I was mad because I wanted them to move it. Did I say, will y'all please move your stuff? Did I go into any solution? No. I just wanted them to notice what they have done to me and them to change. All right? Silly. But we do that. We do that in big areas and we do it in little areas. So I got out of there alive, so that's good. So let's look at shame versus grace. Because again, we all want to be in God's grace, and shame has a power without our awareness to keep it from us. Just remember, shame makes everything about what you deserve, and everything feels very personal. So some of you know that recently, about 2 months ago, the day before Ashley Black became Ashley Black, my car got keyed. I have a very cool car, and I really like my car. And I went to a Rite Aid, I walked out, my car had been keyed. I didn't care, not a big deal. But when I told people, everybody said, what did you do to deserve that? Everybody said, who did you make angry? What did you do to deserve that? Can I tell you what a horrible message we relay on each other when we say stuff like that to each other? What I deserved was to die when I was 15 years old, and many times they're over. That's what I deserve. I could care less. I haven't fixed it. I don't care that it's keyed. It still does 100 miles per hour. I don't care. Really, all I cared about, really what I deserve is to go out and tell people the gospel. I deserve to tell people what Jesus Christ has done for me. And what I want for the person who keys my car, they deserve the exact same thing. They deserve to find Jesus, because you can't do that and know Jesus, and go from there and share their story. This is not about what we deserve. This is about grace. And don't believe the lie of shame that you don't deserve to live in His will. Grace allows us to not have to live out what we deserve, and salvation becomes personal. Again, when I am standing, I can't always do it, but when I'm standing on the resurrection of Jesus Christ and you're laughing around me, I don't take it personally. You can even be laughing at me, and I still don't take it personally. Because I'm standing on the power of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Shame says I have to earn, and grace just says I have to receive. I think this is why it's so hard for us just to accept our salvation. We don't have to do anything. We say, I have to read my Bible more. I need to go to church more. I need to be on more committees. We're making our salvation about us. It's not about me. It's about Jesus. I can't do anything to mess it up. I simply have to pick it up and accept His grace. It's that simple. It's so simple, it makes it hard. Again, it's powerlessness versus His power. If you're feeling powerless in a situation, and I know there are people here tonight who have horrific situations, but they don't have to feel powerless when they know His power. 1 Peter 5:10, after you suffer for a short time, God, who gives all grace, will make everything right. He will make you strong and support you and keep you from falling. He called you to share in His glory in Christ, a glory that will continue forever. This is a great scripture, except for that part that I have to suffer for a short time, because God's short time is different than my short time, right? But I love that His word tells us that He will make everything right, and that this is about being strong in Him. What Yulia and Cher was that they are strong in Him, and that they found support. The difference between a traumatic event and a bad experience is support. That's the difference. We're here to support each other. We do not have to go through this alone. And that means He'll keep me from falling down. Doesn't mean I won't cry. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be upset. Doesn't mean I'm not going to scream and yell, as Mark talked about in his car for 15 minutes. It means I don't have to completely fall. And then I get to share in the glory of Jesus forever. It's not a bad deal. So, from victim to grace, how do we get there? So we understand what happens on the victim side, and it happens to all of us. We have to start repair. Repair means that I move forward differently. In AA, we talk about that we have to do what we don't want to do and not do what we do want to do. You have to move forward differently. Pick one thing and do it differently. You start to repair. Once we start to repair, we can accept our circumstances. Doesn't mean we like our circumstances. It means we can accept them and start to get into God's grace for that acceptance. And there's a renewal. A renewal means my old self, that old pattern, that old person can be set aside. It means whatever I've been fearing all this time, I'm acknowledging that God is bigger than whatever I fear. And then when I have that happen, I repair and I'm renewed. My identity and my attachment goes to His purpose for me. Then I know who I am. My identity is not the disorder. It's its grace. It's what He's going to do for me. There's a resiliency. Resiliency to me means tell your story. Don't talk your story. People talk all the time. Tell your story. I mean, that's why we have the Bible. He wanted His story told. We have to tell our story to people and get the shame out of us and know that whatever we've been through, whatever we've done or has been done to us, is forgiven. It's really important that we tell our story to save people. And with that, there's a resurrection. You know, I love that when Christ was gone for 3 days, when He was buried, that He took our sin and our shame and He buried it. He did away with it. And so that's what happens when you get out of this victim stance, that everything that you've been through and all the things that's tethering you to that shame, that you bury it. And from that, there's a resurrection. You get to be a new person, have a new purpose, a new identity. And you get to live in God's grace. Again, it doesn't make everything okay. It just gives purpose to what isn't okay. This is Kristen. Kristen had a good life. As an adult, she got sick in a hospital. She lost both of her arms and one leg. She is your main speaker next month. This is a picture of resurrection. This is a picture of resiliency. If anybody has a right to give up, it would be her, and she hasn't. This is a renewed woman. I want to read the rest to you of what Matt wrote to me about my fall. He wrote, "This scared me to death, and so glad you are alive, well, and a new person. I get to stand in front of you renewed. I get to be renewed today. All because I accepted what was happening to me, and I stepped into His grace." That's good news. We can all do that.